started. And then the second phenomenon, and just as important, was the fruit on the trees. People came to Salt Spring, the psychologist, psychiatrist. Bill Pettit was the psychiatrist. There weren't any others, and Roger Mills was the first one, not George. And then George and the others came. And so Roger was he picked it up, and he teamed up with Elsie. But what they noticed when they came was all these ordinary people with no psychological backgrounds were really happy and content, were really settled, and understood more about how the mind worked than they did. And they'd been studying it all their life. And as Bill Pettit said, he was an expert in mental illness, but he never knew anything about mental health. So the fruit really, really supported what Sid was talking about. So we flash forward many years later, and now I'm teaching out in the world and so on. And I only really have one purpose. I want to alleviate suffering. And wherever I go, spirit takes me, because I have a strong indigenous exposure. I taught a long time. All the people, this is very important for you to understand, must find your own voice, not follow the group. Sid did not want followers. He called them puppets. You must not be a puppet. You can't help anyone if you're a puppet. You must follow the spirit within yourself. So I went into the indigenous world, and everyone went into the psychological world. Perfect for me. And then all of it, so spirit took me there and says, oh, you're a smarty pants. You found a niche that nobody else wanted. Yeah, I said, yeah, I didn't say I was a smarty pants, but I certainly noticed nobody else wanted it. And then at a certain age, 69, spirit took me into the world of addiction. Very interesting. Never took a psychology course, never was addicted. Perfect qualifications to become an expert in addiction. And I'm just finishing up my second book on it, Evolution of Addiction Recovery, book 2. 42 chapters. I just wrote the other one 2 years ago. I go, why do I have to write another book? Spirit told me. And I said, what am I going to write? Well, 42 insights later, I have 42 chapters. That's the way it works. Original thought. Forget about the other stuff. Nonsense, wasting your time trying to figure it out, type of stuff. It's useless. And then I have, because people see me in a lot of webinars and podcasts, addiction, alcoholism, 3 principles, I have Greg Suki. Well, it turns out Greg Suki is an expert in addiction, alcoholism. He had, in 1 second, an insight and totally dropped it right across the board. Boom. 12 months later, he was introduced to 3P, and he says, oh, there's a language to what I experienced. And he starts to share it. And then we meet and we love each other, boom, like this. So we start Addiction, Alcoholism, 3 Principles. Spirit, by the way, only Friday night, I say, let's do it. He says, I know a free Zoom room. Sunday, he says, let's do it. I say, Sunday? I'm thinking maybe a month away or something like that. So I figured, well, like this show, start same as this show, exactly the same. I figured, well, 2 or 3 people will show up. Almost 30 show up. And then tons of people start watching after we posted it to YouTube. And people start changing. And so now, after 3.5 years, we decided to stop our show. So I just do podcasts. And Joe does a lot of editing for me, by the way. Thanks, Joe. So just to let you know you're still there. And we have close to 20,000 downloads in a little over 1.5 years. People like new, fresh stuff. People are bored with fossil stuff, old stuff. Fresh, new, ever growing. So then I start another group, another one that I'm totally an expert in, obviously expert in everything I do. Tawhid, spiritual unity of the three principles. Show with a 26-year-old Muslim from Casablanca and a 74-year-old Jew. Perfect combination. You couldn't ask for better. You know, just naturally tied together. Except no prejudice, no prejudice. And that's how I met Anthony. He saw one show. He liked the energy that I shared. And he called me up and said, da, 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 da. And then after a little more da, 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 we decided to get together. Serious. Oh, he's serious. No energy, no smiles. But after 2 sessions, he figured it out. Figured out he could be, oh, I could have a good time doing this. Oh, I can be happy doing this. So while this is happening, and this is interesting because just before this, we started the group, Pursuit of Truth Regarding Mental Health. And how did it start? First, there's this guy, John Stiley, who's a member of the group. And he's got all the mental illness stuff and all the addiction stuff. Oh, he's got a layer of them, a cupboard full of them. Only thing is, this guy is spiritually deep, really deep, far beyond almost everyone in 3P. Really, really understands clean. So we soar together, but he doesn't get it. He has this good feeling when he's with me, and he soars, and the two of us just go into the clouds of wisdom, or the sun of wisdom, maybe that's a better image, and he doesn't get it. And then one time I say to him, do you realize how beautiful you are? And he goes like this. For about a minute and a half, and then a big smile comes on his face. Oh, I'm beautiful too? All he had heard was loser, 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 loser. And he had it. Oh yeah, he went back and forth, but I kept kicking in his bum and saying, no, you're just bullshitting again. You're just playing nonsense. I like to use sophisticated psychological words, so you'll pick that up. Yeah, and so then another one came who I was counseling. So that too, we had a group. And the group was doing really cozy, but the trouble was too cozy. And then Joe came in. See, it's a closed group, invite only. We're not looking for, they have to have certain criteria. They have to be fruit, salt spring. They have to be salt spring. They have to have a transformational experience. Good if they have some training with me, because it helps the cohesiveness. But they're picked because they can soar, and they have transformational story. Because when Joe came, he provided energy, lots of questions, and he had the the Phoenix user group. He says, how can I arrange you guys to talk on here? He brought brand new, fresh energy. And all of a sudden I got a vision. See, I can't go out, guys, into mental health. Nobody's going to listen to me. Nobody. They're not going to listen to wisdom. There's no way. They have to have fruit, proof, and let the proof do it. Now, who did that the best? Dr. Roger Mills with Modelo. The women came on at a conference. Everybody sounded boring in comparison to them because they were fresh and alive with this transformational experience. And so the group started to grow. And then it kept growing. I kept finding little pieces. Now we have 6 members to this very interesting group. Mark was going to come on, but he got this COVID shot yesterday. He has had a repercussion. He's totally different than Joe. He has a PhD in physics. You know, he's like a mathematical genius. But, you know, he had addictions and mental health issues, et cetera, et cetera. No, you know, type of stuff. I don't care what people have. It's immaterial to me. I have clients coming all over the place for 1,000 different reasons. Still the same answer. Yeah, I know a lot of people teach thought, feeling stuff, and it's very good, but I don't do that. I say first, see your beauty, get a nice feeling, and now we'll teach about thought, you know. So that's the way I do it. And within that context, each member of the group, who am I? Am I the head of the group? No, I'm the lead coach. We talked about what I had, the title I had to have. And everybody coaches everybody else, including me. So with that small introduction, Joe, everybody is waiting with a bated breath to talk whatever you like. Oh, Joe, what does the group mean to you?
Well, I mean, it's given me the chance to meet some of the wisest people I've ever come across and had the fortune. And it's allowed me that where previously I had no purpose in life, and that my life, it was just kind of going down a dead end. And I can see that actually I mean something, I have a chance to grow, and that everyone in the group has such a big heart, and I'm part of that, and I can kind of feel their energy, and I can just go and talk, and then it's kind of the talk that I couldn't have with other people. And it just allows me to see that actually there is a butterfly in me, and I may have been stuck in a chrysalis all my life, but I can emerge in my beauty and see that all these people are so beautiful and they have this wonderful message. And I mean, I've been in mental health for like a long time, and I've seen the suffering of people, and I've seen how people have given up hope, and just see that they've got no hope in life. And I can see from these people that despite what's happened to them, they can just emerge, and we can all emerge, and we all have this beauty within us and this purity, and it's just, we're waiting to discover it. And then when we hear these people's message and see that, yes, that's within us, we can have the hope, that there is hope for all of us, and we all still have a life within us, and we can all get there, and it's there for everyone, despite what we've been told, despite the diagnosis we've been given, despite not having hope, it is there, and it's innate in everyone. And just being in this group, I mean, I'm so grateful for that, and meeting Harry, because I can see now that, yes, I have this beauty within me as well. And no, I don't have to give up hope. I don't have to be despair. And even sometimes, yeah, sometimes I get down, but then I know it's still there, and it'll still connect, and it'll still come alive, and I'll come alive, and then I'll connect, and I'm part of something now. And I can see that, yes, this could give people so much hope and so much alleviation, and they can see that, no, my life isn't over. I've still got hope, and I can do this, and we can all do it. We just need to discover it.
What helped you discover it, Joe?
Well, initially I read a book, and it was kind of, it talked about thought and that. And so I could kind of, that was the initial catalyst that I could see, actually, I wasn't my diagnosis. I wasn't sick as what I told, that I wasn't broken, and I've been told I'd never recover. And I could see, actually, there's a whole new way of looking at this. And then I discovered Sydney Banks' name in it. And so I thought I'd look at him on YouTube. And then the first thing I heard him say is that we all live in mental health. And it was just that complete like realization that actually that is within me, that healthiness. And so then I just kept listening to him and that, and kind of as I settled down, and then I just kind of had this complete shift, and it was just like, I was just, loads of positivity was going into me. And it was just like a change as a person, whereas before I was just so restricted and so limited. I could see that actually I'd just put limitations on myself and boundaries on myself. And it was something I just created from like my personal mind. And it was not true just because I got these ideas and that. They were just ideas, and it's not who I am. It's just a belief. And once I drop them beliefs and see beyond them, I know I'm so much more than that, and that we all are.
Incredible.
Yeah, from disaster diagnosis to this. That's all of us.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, you know, I totally relate to what you were saying there, Joe, about how Sydney Banks just talked about mental health as being, I think I remember him saying, like, we're just all sitting in it, even if we don't know it. And my experience, I think a little bit like what you were saying, Harry, about Bill Pettit, and in mental health services, it's almost like all of our training is very much focused on the opposite, isn't it? And that was the same for me, like 3 years ago, just that was the point at which I truly understood what mental health actually was, in a way. And that's so important, isn't it, when we're trying to help people find mental health, to be able to point them to that which is the opposite of all that illness and negativity.
Yeah. Well, one of the things for sure, what Joe is alluding to, is the lack of hope that the field has for people right now. I have a client who's on fentanyl, and which for any who don't know about it, probably everyone does, is the heaviest of drugs out there, on the street. And his question to me epitomizes what Joe is pointing towards. He says, is it possible for me to live a normal life? And the answer, of course, what I told him was absolutely. And you should have seen the relief. Oh, I could actually live outside of these beliefs and barriers that appear to be who I am. And when he feels good, he sees a lot of that. But when he feels bad, he goes right back into the hole. You can feel Joe's resilience, can't you? He's not saying he never goes down, but he doesn't stay in the hole for a couple of weeks or a couple of months or a lifetime. He breaks free of that. That's what you want to share with yourself, your feelings with yourself. Because if you don't have that feeling, you can't help anyone. That's what Anthony found when he came working to me. He already knew the answer. I knew that. I could tell like a piece of cake, but he knew the answer. But he was kind of feeling his mental illness. Negative feelings take you to mental illness. All Sid is saying, positive feelings take you to mental health. That's the 3 principles. Positive feelings take you. As soon as he felt a positive feeling, not from me, but from him, guess where his mental health poured out? That was it. It was it's like such a thin film. And then when we work together in a group, like with Joe and John and all these other people, there's a chemistry, a synergy, a group dynamic, because we were meeting once a week every Wednesday. We're not doing it this Wednesday because we're doing your show. So it's cool. I don't have to sing and dance this week. Besides, I'm on holidays, so this is just, type of thing. So, but what we notice with the group, the group wisdom, the group dynamic, it's wonderful. It's healing. Healing is in the impersonal. It's in this feeling we explore here together. No intellect. You got to get out of that stuff. No concept. It's a spiritual reality. Fact. You don't think so. So it isn't in your personal experience. When you wake up, it will be. I haven't woken up like Sid has woken up, but he certainly has helped me to see it's a spiritual reality. Joe is a living testimony to that feeling. Could you tell him, give him a little, just a 3-second, like a minute at the most, Joe, a little bit of your, when you were in your downturn or your normal life before you came to your understanding?
Well, I mean, I was sick as a child and diagnosed as chronic fatigue. So that kind of restricted pretty much most of my life. And I've kind of got loads of anxiety and diagnosis from that. And so I tried kind of different therapies, which were temporary help. But it was always kind of, I would just go back all the time. And all I could see was just like, this was me. And just it was just the way I'd just been dealt with life. And that I kind of had no hope and told that I would never recover. And so that was kind of quite soul destroying, really. And it was just to realize that actually there is this spirituality, which I kind of knew in one part of me, but I never knew it as a fact before. And then I knew that I could just see these insights would come. And it was just that they could just come like that. And so I didn't have to kind of search for them. And then it can just shift your life. And it's just knowing that to be there. And it's not something you have to go out and find and that. It's just when you quieten down, or a lot of times when I wake up, something will come that will just shift you. And so it just kind of breaks you free from the chains.
Chains of slavery.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys have seen what Shirley's written. She's asked a question, and I can really resonate this. So Shirley's asked, do you need to be spiritual for it to work? If so, can you define what you mean by spirituality? Because I'm really aware that when I first came across this, my first response, Harry, was, oh, I'm not spiritual. No, that's all a bit weird. And I guess because I had a very fixed view of what spiritual meant, but I wonder what it means to you and how you see it.
Sure. Joe, you go for it first.
Well, I would say is we're all spiritual. I mean, we're all spiritual beings, and we just don't know that. And it's not a search for something, or we have to use a concept or an idea. It's just that that's what within us, and that's who we are. And it's kind of everything, the part of every kind of nature. And we're part of that nature. And it's always, I mean, you can see how nature is guided by an intelligence. And I mean, you can see how birds can fly thousands of miles and just know where to go. Or like, they just know how to rear their young. So there's this intelligence behind everything. And we're part of that. And it's always guiding us. It's just we kind of ignore it and put stuff on it. But that kind of spiritual intelligence is behind us all the time. And that healing. And if we can kind of give into it, like kind of surrender the kind of resistance to it and let it actually come to us and go through us. And guys, and it will heal us. And it's see how when you break a bone that it naturally heals. And there's some intelligence behind it that's doing it. And it's just, we put a term on it and that's one of the terms we put on it, but it's there and it's just that feeling. And when we kind of get to that feeling, that's where all the healing is.
It's really interesting, Joe, because I think that was the thing that helped me. Not because for me, spirituality, I had for a long time associated with religion. And yet it's about nature, isn't it? It's about the way the universe works. It's so much more than that kind of narrow belief of faith in a god or whatever. It's much bigger than that. As you say, it's the intelligence behind it all.
And it's when we kind of let go of the intellectual mind and the need to control and just realize that actually there's this big picture of everything that is infinite and has been, and the planet's been going for billions of years and it knows what it's doing. And if we can kind of trust and give in, I mean, some people would call it faith or belief, which is another word, but it's the trust, isn't it? That the universe is there and it is there to heal us, and we can actually let it do what it does and have that faith that it's bigger than us and it knows more than us, and that we kind of have put concepts and barriers on it. But when we let that go and kind of realize that, that's where the healing is.
So that's important. See, Shirley Clark, there's two Shirleys here. It's a 3 principles is a spiritual psychology. So it is a psychology, but it's a spiritual psychology. And for a definition, Sid kept, of course, with in the 70s, there was religion and spirituality was defined within this. But so he would often talk about oneness and accessing the spiritual wisdom within yourself. So I'm going to give you an example in my life that was what I call a spiritual psychological experience. So I'm have a deep spiritual experience, I call spiritual, and I experienced pure consciousness, but it didn't include thought. So later I meet with Sid, and he picks me up at the ferry, and we go out to local restaurant and have a big local meal, big cheap price, big plates, and all the local Salt Springers go there. And then I have a car at that time, a ZX Turbo 300 Nissan ZX, fastest car on the road, and had a T-roof. And his dog, Fergus, sticks his head out. Now, one thing, if you wanted Sid to like you, you had to have his dog like you. And it turned out that Fergus loved me. That, I think that was Sid considered my greatest accomplishment, that his dog didn't like that many people, but he liked me. And so Sid would say, well, that's a guaranteed check mark, you know, that Harry's, you know, got something to offer. So Fergus was my was in that moment type of thing. And his head is, and we're driving around the island and Sid's really smiling because Fergus is happy. And Sid loved Fergus. And so we drive up to the top of a mountain overlooking incredible panoramic view, abyss and mountains and just everything gorgeous. And he says to me, okay, Ari, of course, I'm not Harry or Harold, I'm Ari, you know, because he's Scottish, you know. And he says, okay, Ari, ask me anything you want. I go, oh, this is kind of cool. Here I am, able to ask this enlightened man whatever you want. So I ask him 10 questions, all spiritually based in my mind. Because it's just a word, as Joe says. It just means who you are. It's like, you know, you aren't, if you keep evolving, Shirley, you must be growing into something from somewhere. Spiritual. So we're on the thing, and then on the 10th question, I ask him something. I can't even remember what it was, but thought goes out of my mouth. I see thought go out into the abyss and boomerang back into me as a feeling. And I go, who the heck is creating all your suffering, Harry? This boomerang is creating all my suffering. At that point, I had my first insight to thought. You see, I had consciousness and spirit. See, what is mind, Shirley? You don't like spiritual? Use mind. Mind is a psychological word for God. You don't like God? Use mind. Of course he used mind because they were psychologists. They didn't. And when he went to the physics guys, he started saying it's a spiritual reality. So he met with the top physics guys in the world, in the United States, in Florida, because he wanted to talk to them. And he started talking. And they said, you can't use spiritual with us. We're physicists. He says, well, what can I use? He says, well, energy. Oh, energy. Erase spiritual. Energy. Energy, spirit, spiritual, mind, all the same thing. And then he starts talking. And the guy leaves. This is such a cool, I'm switching stories all of a sudden. This guy is so, this guy who is the head of this big corporation that was able to get all these physics guys, he had to go, had a meeting, he said, Sid, don't you talk. These are the top guys. You listen. And he leaves and he comes back and Sid's writing on the board. All the people are listening to him. And he says, Sid! And they all go, shh, 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 master talking. And he had seen that Einstein's formula was incorrect. He doesn't know anything about math. He doesn't know anything about physics. Same thing with native spirituality. The Great Spirit tape that he, CD he put out, doesn't know anything about native spirituality. He knows so much about native spirituality that before he made the talk, he phoned me up and asked me to tell him something about it. You can see him reading my notes that I told him about, because he, and then when an indigenous hears, they say, is that a shaman? Well, how does a man who knows nothing about indigenous be a shaman? How does a man who knows nothing about physics and a grade 9 education be able to talk to the leading physics about Einstein's formula, the same way I can go into the world of pursuit of truth regarding mental health. Its spirit brings you to it. And then you meet great people like Joe. That's spiritual. That to me is spiritual. Meet incredible people that you don't know. And how did I pick him? Well, it was obvious. He had a feeling, I'm going to hate to tell you this, Shirley Clark, that was spiritual. And I recognized it. So I pulled him in. I said, okay, we got this little group, 2, 3, then before we knew it was 4 or 5, then 6, you know. And what an interesting group. 2 women, 1 Black. We have to have the right dispersion of people after all. I mean, we need specimens or representatives from the thing. And the 2 women who come in, yeah. And Nikki, incredible soars, beautiful wisdom. Yeah, but as you can see, Joe knows something. He's the fruit of the group. Therapists will listen to Joe. They won't listen to Harry. That's great. Harry's not that interested anymore anyway. I've done a lot of talking. As you can tell, I'm very, very shy. So what have you enjoyed the most besides all that? Joe, what is like something you heard in the group or something like that?
I mean, definitely when Nikki said about how we're all perfect, really, and whatever we've kind of done or happened in our life. And that kind of made me see that we were doing the best we could at the time, and that we kind of sometimes get away from it innocently. And it's the innocence that we don't realize. And when we don't realize, I mean, we can't blame ourselves, can we? Or blame when we kind of don't know how it works. And then when we know how it works, we kind of see that perfection within us and that light within us. And then it was kind of just seeing the different people. And then John talking about how we kind of do get the kind of thoughts that kind of we don't like, but we can just observe them and let them pass. And then we can kind of come back, and we're always coming back to it. And it's always there for us to come back to. And so, yes, we may sometimes go away from it and think we've lost it, but we've never lost it because it's who we are. It's our core. And that when we do connect, and sometimes we have to hear it from people, and then we kind of remember, because I forget a lot of times, and it's kind of remembering from them and that. And then it's just having different people and I can talk to, and I can talk to Mark, who talks about science. And then it's in science because it's in everything, isn't it? And because it is everything it is. And it is that oneness that is everything. So he talks about science, but science is still describing it. And then John comes in and talks more about his kind of religious background, but then it's through that as well. And you can hear it there. And then Nikki comes and she talks about her more mental health background, but it's still there. And Jay comes and he talked about his Hindu background, and then kind of this what happened there, and it's through there. And so it's through all of the things. And then Noctu as well, he's got his take on it. And then he sees the oneness, how with the oneness and everything's there's not the duality, there's the singularity. And so he gives me that view of it. And so each person has their own take on it that gives you a new insight, that brings it out of you. And so, yeah, I mean, I just look forward to it, just seeing the new things that I can discover and the new things I can hear that I never saw before, which brings out more and more wisdom in me.
And the key, guys, Anthony and Sarah, that you want to emphasize is their voice. You want them to find their voice. All of them had this loser image, all of them. But I knew that was nonsense because I saw who they were. I could feel it in who they were. And it wasn't easy to get Joe to see his own voice. He wanted to give the power away to Dickin or to different people. He was always doing that because he was really running away from what he was experiencing. And it was only recently that I've been able to help him to see that that's not what the group is about. Please understand who are here. This is not a mentoring group. I don't need another mentoring group. I am not mentoring these people. I am the lead coach who we all are coaching each other. We all are there. I am useless without them. And I don't mean it in humbleness or something. The reality is the world will not listen to me. They will listen to the fruit and the stories of the fruit. That's the way the world operates. That's how Modelo worked. The women were much more powerful than Roger was. Roger was the best educator ever in 3P. The best educator. We don't have a lot of good educators in 3P. We have a lot of nice levels of consciousness, but not great. Roger was a beyond compare educator. And he was community. But of course, it disappeared until recently in 3P because there was no money in it.
Harry, were you not fruit as well, though?
Sorry?
Were you also fruit? Because you say that people will only listen to fruit, but surely you're fruit too.
I have trouble with your, and my sound isn't quite so good because I've just got a little microphone. Go ahead, say it again.
I was just saying that you say that people will listen to fruit, but you're fruit too.
About fruit?
You're fruit too.
No, the fruit.
Joe, what is she saying, Anthony?
Saying you're
Sorry.
fruit too. She's saying you are fruit too.
Well, of course, that's why I can see the fruit in everybody else. Absolutely. See, the beauty, Sarah, is, this is what I love. Harry had and still, Court, a big self-inflated image of himself. As you go deeper into levels of consciousness, you still come up with, it's nothing compared to Sid. It's so beautiful. We're all fruit of the single experience. What he attained, you can attain and more. But it just, he's his level. So I've learned more from Sydney Banks in the last year than I did in the previous 45 years. That's the way it works. You get cleaner and cleaner. In the second book he wrote, In the Quest of a Pearl is created each day. The oyster, or whatever it is, it throws out the impurities. And then the pearl of wisdom. That's kind of how it works. I'm freer and freer to share the impersonal, the spirit. Sid was an ordinary guy. Everybody, he's enlightened. Well, I knew both sides of Sydney Banks, and I can tell you he was a great guy, but not a perfect guy. But he was, when he came to talk, it was perfection. The first talk I saw Sydney Banks was at a gathering of the Ways, maybe 1,000 hippies. Of course, in those days, that's everybody was a hippie. And he just had a nail stuck right up his foot. So he had to talk with this excruciating pain. Of course, I didn't know he had any excruciating pain because he was beautiful. And he talked. And it was that talk that brought he and my past wife to the island. Spiritual. And then we looked all over he said, come to the island. Come to the island. Everybody will know me and you could. So we came to the island. Nobody knew him. Couldn't one end, the other end, the other end. I'm going, holy mackerel. This is, and then finally somebody said, maybe on Trip Road, all these hippies, and it's Trip Road. And there was two people there who were, and I phoned Sid up and I say, hi, Sid, I saw you at Gathering of the Ways. Let's meet. I really liked your feeling. He says, well, I'm busy today. How about tomorrow? I go, oh, tomorrow? I'm already thinking of leaving the island. Well, okay for you. I'll stay one extra day. Big effort that I'm going to make. And he came. At that time, there was 20 maybe. And I thought they always did this, but it was the first time they all got together. Of course, it was spaghetti dinner because nobody had any money. And you gotta remember, this is hippie time. This is not like, your rich time now where you got all this money and all you do is bitch about it. It's not that time. It was a time when people had no money and stuff. And so he came and he talked and we stayed. What was his impression of me after that first meeting? Of course, he and his wife, beautiful Barb Banks, his first wife. Oh, what an unbelievable team. These two were in love like you couldn't believe. Oh, so beautiful. So they talked about us, and this is what they said. It's to show you what a high level of consciousness I was. They said, well, Cindy, which was the name of my past wife, maybe, not too much of a chance, but maybe. But that Harry, no way possible. So that was his first impression of me. You didn't know that, did you, Joe?
No.
But that's the truth. And we stayed. And then they were all so happy. Oh, Salzburg, they were all so happy. And my wife and I weren't. We were fighting. And we're going, what the heck? And we have no friends. There was an in crowd, and we were sort of on the out crowd type of thing. But we met at Sid's place. That's what he did at the beginning. There was no hall. There was Sid's place. He had 5-acre or 10-acre, I don't know, beautiful panoramic view of the ocean, a living room with a bright orange carpet and a gorgeous fireplace from the rocks from the island that he and Chip had built. And Sid sat on the mantle, always had a blazing fire. The ships would go by on the thing, gorgeously. His wife would serve tea and cookies. She'd come in and she'd say, has he got to the good stuff yet? No. She'd go back out again. Come back a little later. Got to the good stuff? Yeah. Oh, sat down and listened. And we started to talk. Just like this. That was it. And at a certain point, we got so disgruntled, we waited after one of those meetings at his house. My wife was crying, we're not happy, everybody's so happy. And, I'm going, oh, I'm not too happy about. And he says to her, don't worry, dearie, it will. And sure enough, about 2 weeks later, I'm walking along St. Mary's Lake. I remember, no car, we're hitchhiking. We're not driving a car. We're hippies, long hair, big beard, like I have now. You notice? Same. Yeah. And walking, my mind shuts down. Totally empty, totally quiet, totally silent. For 4 or 5 minutes, just stillness. I can hear every bird, every crystal bird. I can see every hue in the air all around me. I'm not here. I'm conscious, but this is quieted down. See, they're right, the psychologists. This quiets down. It bypasses that, and you experience, I'm sorry, Shirley, a spiritual reality. That's what it is. That's who you are, pure consciousness. There are 3 pure principles: pure consciousness, pure mind, well, God, or innate wisdom. You got to give it a psychological word, and pure thought. And Sid's gift was the bridge between the spiritual and the psychological world is thought. And so all of a sudden, I walked after that. It's been 4 or 5 minutes later, Sarah, bing, my mind comes back on. I'm back here. Where I was where you go when you die. Was I enlightened? No way I was enlightened. But was life ever as hard for me after that? No. It was a fact. He was right. I had a concept of it, and then I had a fact of it. And how did that feel? The same way Joe felt. See, that's why you don't need to know Sydney Banks to understand what he was talking about. I have learned more from Sydney Banks in the last year than the previous 45 years. Why? Because I'm stupid. You know, that's why.
So what's been different, Harry, in the past year?
Pardon?
Anthony, can you ask? Because I think I've got an echo going on.
What's been different for you, Harry, in this last year? Given
Well, the difference, it's pretty simple. At 69, everything started to work out, Anthony. Things like the addiction thing all of a sudden exploded into, and so Joe brought up a very big word, trust. You know, Joe started to trust the spirit or trust that things would work out. That's all you're teaching, besides hope, that trust thing that Joe was alluding to. And I want you to finish, Joe, with talking a little more about that trust, if you wouldn't mind. But so basically the difference is I'm getting out of the way, Anthony, more and more and more. And as I get out of the way, the physical world ceases to have the importance it had before. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's the way it works. I once said to Sid, when I was jealous of him, he says, well, obviously money's going to come to me. My level of consciousness attracts it. That's the way it works. So as your level of consciousness rises, you just naturally use less this, more intuitive mind, intuitive feeling. So you're not thinking, you're thinking less and less, and this is in harmony. I don't dislike my thoughts, but it's in harmony. And I know which thoughts to disregard. There's lots of them, Anthony, lots of them. You know, every night I go to sleep, I go, oh boy, there's a lot of bullshit in there. I got to clean up my line. Nonsense in there. Nonsense in there. So the answer is this image that I love, I often talk about. In the indigenous world, there was a shaman called Full Scroll, and he talked about healing. Now, take my word for it, the indigenous know a lot about healing. A lot more than people, the non-indigenous, give him credit for. It's, of course, it's a world they don't understand. Hollow bones. The more hollow this is, the cleaner the healing. Who are you healing, Anthony? Are you cleaning your clients or are you cleaning yourself? Hi, Harry, how would you say we can get closer to living in that higher level? Oh, that's easy. Be yourself. Just be yourself. That's what Joe's learning. When I asked Joe to find his voice, and I've really rammed him pretty hard on it, by the way. It wasn't the piece of cake. Joe was pretty adamant about who he thought he was. But I did it in a loving way. He knew I was compassionate and caring, and he knew I was right. You know, so it was a good, he was lucky. He was lucky. He was a good student. See, he knew I wasn't coming from a personal perspective. That's another way of saying that. Get out of the personal perspective. You don't want to trust your own opinions. You want to trust God's opinions. That's the way you get into how do you do that? You get in contact with your intuitive feelings. Don't tell me you're not intuitive. It's ridiculous. Just that right now the world's so mental. so intellectual, so scientific. Well, I'm none of those. I know that. In my book, I wrote, Sid said, the 3 principles are a working science. That should be enough for you to know how to get into what you're asking for. No one can tell you, sweetie, nobody. No offense, nobody can tell you. You have to see it for yourself, live it for yourself. And by the way, lighten up. Stop taking things so seriously.
There's something about staying in this space, isn't there? Staying in the conversation, being in this space. And
that's what it's about.
Curious.
Yeah, that's your job. That's why people come to you. When Anthony came to me, did I tell him, did I get into a heavy space? No. And did he like it? Yeah. He hadn't heard a good story about Anthony for a year. Finally, someone was saying something nice about him.
Harry, let me tell you, the first conversation I had with Anthony after he'd met with you, he swore like a trooper.
And that feeling comes from him, and it rubs off. See, Joe's feeling is rubbing off. That's all fruit is. Joe is a rub off of good feelings. That's what it's about. So Joe said, I don't want to dominate the conversation because I'm much more interested in them hearing about yourself. So either about trust or about what she's talking about, because it's just as true for you. You're walking in a higher level of consciousness now as well. How would you answer that question that she gave?
On levels of consciousness.
Yeah, well, basically, well, let's Anthony's question. How in the last year have I learned more than all the rest of the years combined? And what's the trick with that? And et cetera, et cetera. How can these people know what's coming for them when they lighten up?
Well, the first thing for me is the acceptance of, at the present time, you are where you are, and that's okay too, because that's the universe, and it will rise, and then you'll have the insight, and each time you have a realization, then you go a bit higher, and then you kind of have you see the world in a new way, and it's that trust again that it will just come naturally, and that when we do settle down, we'll have a sudden realization that about the life that no one can teach us or tell us, because it's already there within us. And so we're here, kind of somebody like Sid Banks or the teachings we like to go to, and then we're here beyond what they're saying, because it'll go beyond our intellectual minds, and then it touches us inside, and it connects, and then we get that realization, and then I've had it, and then I can say, oh, that's what it was, that's what was happening, and then it was just kind of like suddenly that's what they meant, and it's come from you, and it's not come from an intellectual understanding of it, but it's because it's come out, and it's nurtured, and it's grown, and it's become a beautiful flower, and then you just naturally see the world in a different way. And then it's going back to, again, trust that it will happen, and not to try and rush it or force it or try and willfully do it, but that it is part of you. And that's what trust is to know it's part of you, and you can choose to believe it or not believe it, but it's still you, and it's there. And then when it happens and you get to that feeling, then you go home, and we're always going home, and that's where we want to be.
I think I remember, sorry, Harry, I think I remember Sid saying it, the question of how to grow, and the secret being that the best way to grow is not to try. I think he said.
It sounds so stupid, yet it's absolutely dead on. That's the answer to the question. I've stopped trying. I stopped caring what people think of me. I stopped caring what they're talking about me. I know who I am to a level. I know. People can say whatever they want, but I have to be my own independent inner voice. I have to know that I can trust my intuitive feelings. Most people don't know that. And you just get more and more trusting that, oh, it just works. You see, that's what you're looking for, something very practical. What works and what doesn't work? Both will set you free. You want to see both sides. What doesn't work? Like with AA, well, it doesn't work for most people. But they believe it, so they hold on to the lies more and more. You should listen to them. It's like, you think religion is bad. Whew, AA is worse. Because they're holding on to a lie. The lie is they are not diseased for the rest of their life. But as long as they believe they are diseased for the rest of their life, they're going to be part of AA. But you don't want to be part of AA. You want to be part of Harry Derbitski, free, independent. You want to know that you can trust your own wisdom. Of course, I use the word spirit, surely, but it's just because I like that word. I'm comfortable with that word. But what the reality of it is, Sid only was talking about accessing your own wisdom. And when you access your own wisdom, miracles happen. Now, I'm going to tell you a fact about my life. It's exceeded my wildest expectations. I mean it. It's so cool. This is way beyond what I ever expected. Way. And why? Because I let it happen. You know, when people are tennis players, Andrew Agassi, who was a great tennis player, when he was in the middle, like in his training ground and stuff, Anthony, he was an average player. He had no idea of the upward mobility. So as the caliber moved up, he kept moving up with it. And then all of a sudden he surpassed everybody else who was with him. He was as surprised as anybody. You don't know what your unlimited potential is. Don't give me, like, surely or not, you know, you're sitting there. You have no idea what your unlimited potential is. Nobody has an idea because we're living freeing of what Joe was talking about, the slavery, the chains of slavery. We're breaking free of that. And all Sid did was break all the chains. And was he perfect? Not on the outside, but on the inside, like you are, Shirley, perfect. Like Anthony is perfect. Like Sarah is perfect. On the outside, no. Outside, psychological. Inside, spiritual. Spiritual psychology. The harmony. Oh, switches, everybody switched. Yeah. But the reality of it is, Joe's not interested in his greasy stuff. He's interested in his beauty. Right, Joe?
Yeah, definitely. It's otherwise you're kind of digging around in the mud and you're keeping it alive, and then you're kind of becoming that again. Whereas when you see your beauty, you see who you are, and then you're breaking free. Otherwise you're putting yourself back in the chains, and it's kind of break free from the chains and go to who you truly are and see that. And that's who you are, not your past. You're who you are now. And that is the perfection and the beauty. And that's what's going to come out, and it's going to blossom and shine. And then you'll shine, and you'll be that light that shines. Then other people will see that light shining, and their light will shine.
Beautiful, Joe. Beautiful. Seems like a good place for us to maybe call it for this time. And if you like, sometime we'll come on again. Maybe I'll bring somebody else from the group or whatever, you know, but Joe's quite impressive, eh? Quite impressive. This is beautiful, Joe, what you shared, honestly. Beautiful. Yeah, you know, quite a guy, quite a guy. And one of the 6 members of the closed group who was going to go around, hopefully, to help England mental health. And how much? I don't know. A little? A lot? When you see us on BBC, you know, we've penetrated it, you know. And then they're going to have to laugh at the bad jokes. That's the way it works, you know. That's the way it works, you know.
We love bad jokes in the UK, so you'll be right at home.
Yeah. You're welcome, Shirley Clark. Thank you for your question and a genuine question and so on. Now, we're going to leave you with this last thought. This energy is not coming from Joe and Harry. This is us energy. That's the healing. Where we went today is together. Joe will tell you it was an honor. An honor. I know you also were honored listening to him, but it was an honor. It's an honor to be in good energy, guys. This is a good show. Would you agree, Joe?
Yeah, it's always an honor to meet such beautiful people and share with them and hear their wisdom and that. And yes.
And an opportunity for us to voice, you know, to talk. It's pretty cool, isn't it, Joe?
Very cool, yes. I mean, it's always grateful for the opportunity to.
Yeah, you bet.
It's been more than cool, guys. Thank you so much for this space. It's been a beautiful space, and yeah, I've loved every second of it. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. I'm more than happy, you know, and this group is got something to share. And why not, eh? You have something to share. Why not? Yeah. So you're very welcome. Thank you very much. And you can wind it up, Anthony and Sarah, and I can go back to the hot springs. The sunshine is out. No offense, but I'm going into the hot springs, 5 pools, and do a little swim, lie in the sun, and bring my little snacks of food. And well, I just guess I'll have to enjoy myself. It's a tough world, but
someone's got to do it, Harry.
The sympathy I can feel from you guys is really appreciated.
Harry, I don't think it's sympathy you're feeling.
Hasta la vista, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you.